You are listening to Gardens Fresh Homestead, eating fresh to your plate. Today is the 24th of December, 2024. It's 10 past 10 Eastern Standard Time here in Australia. And on today's program, we are going to talk about a couple of subjects here. I've tagged in a couple of senators and media outlets because they've been preaching about this for quite some time, and we're all a bunch of radicals apparently. But it's really good to see the truth come home to roost. This article is really all about my take on this whole article, and I give my points of view on it. It's really interesting. This article just hits home. So if this article really riles you up, really upsets you, at the end of the stream, I'm going to put the link in the description. And if you feel like you have something to add to this article, jump up onto the panel and we can have a discussion. I mean, but this comes no surprise really to some of us homesteaders and backyard gardeners, what's happening in the real world. So, okay, hopefully, it's got to do it. Remember how I used to do it? Okay, put that down, and hopefully, if you'll allow me to do it, here we are. Aussie farmers in foreign hands. New figures revealed surprising trend. We've been saying this for many, many years now, but we've been called radicals in the Western democracy. The Australian government has increased the risk of foreign powers gaining political leverage over the country by allowing key farm and water assets sales to overseas interests, a political think tank has revealed. Well, it comes no surprise of what other countries are doing, buying up our resources, and it's no surprise what they're doing. The warning has come that new figures showing an alarming share of agricultural land and water resources remain in foreign hands, despite a recent move from global investors to offshore of Aussie assets. The Foreign Investment Review Board data revealed about 11.8% of national water entitlements were held in foreign hands at the end of 2023-24 financial year, up from 11%, 2% years ago. Well, it should be completely zero. You know, the government is behind the wheel on all of this, and unfortunately, they've allowed overseas investors to come over with deep pockets and buy up our natural resources. And I'm not talking about mining. This is agriculture, farming sector. Ownership of water and agriculture assets were often connected. Just over 2/3 of water entitlements had agriculture use, while about a fifth were mining and 8% of industrial. Foreigners held entitlements for 47.6 million hectares of Australian agriculture land, down 0.2% from 47.7 hectares years earlier, according to FIRB figures. Well, see, you can see right here, it's getting out of hand. It shouldn't have gotten out to nearly 50 billion hectares of land, but unfortunately, that's where we're at. And the Australian government should have stepped in years ago to have stopped this. Pardon me. This means just shy of 13% of all Aussie agriculture land was held by foreign groups, a small decrease from 14.1% 2 years ago. Over 87% of agriculture land was foreign ownership and was reported to use for livestock, mostly cattle. You see, they know exactly what they're buying, they know exactly what they want, and they're not coming after the mum and pop homestead family. They're coming after big agriculture with cattle on it. Daniel Wild, Deputy Director of the Institute of Public Affairs, said sales from water and assets remain risky. Of course, you don't know who's buying it. No one knows who they are. And unfortunately, the government has been asleep behind the wheel yet again. And they don't care who's buying this land. So, of course, it's risky business. Foreign ownership can play a role in our economical, but our political leaders must be extremely vigilant when it comes to foreign ownership of key food and water infrastructure, as well as defense assets, Mr. Wilder said. You see, this is all key infrastructure that we've allowed to slip from our hands. And unfortunately, they know exactly what to take, food and water, which is our most critical, valuable asset, and to set up base right next to defense assets. It's all strategically planned, and that's why you're seeing certain countries buying up certain assets so we have fewer ownership in this country. One of Australia's central risks of foreign ownership of agriculture and water assets is that it can be used as a political and communal leverage against Australia. You see, when someone buys something like the port of Darwin, the government was dead broke. They had to sell to China for 99 years. So it's either pay them back or you got to wait 99 years to get that port back. So we've been snookered behind the 8 ball here. And no one seems to really give a rat's when it comes down to the brass taxes of everything. In the extreme scenario, it could lead Australians to be denied first access to food grown in their own country in a crisis situation. You see, when people own their own land, they can deny other people resources. You see, a lot of these foreign owned companies own the meatworks, they own the trucking companies, they own the ports. So they can send their food overseas with no qualms whatsoever, while us Australians miss out. Are you starting to see the situation now where the food crisis, the food price, housing prices, it's all skyrocketing? The government is asleep behind the wheel yet again. The FIRB figures showed fewer farms' assets were in foreign hands compared to previous years. But Mr. Wild note that the global political climate has also evolved. Much has changed over the past decade, with eco-political tensions rising, and the China Communist Party becoming increasing belligerent, hostile, and assertive in our region. Now, this is not the time to relax attitude towards these matters, he said. You see, the problem is that we've been told to let things slide, bend the knee, for our economical survival in the Pacific, while other nations like China are running rampant like a tyrant, doing whatever they please. And you're starting to see that right now. So, yet again, the government is asleep behind the wheel, don't care, and then when it's all too late, they'll say, how did this all happen? Ray White, commercial head of research, Vanessa Radar, said livestock were a popular asset for global investors because the growth in food prices. I'll say that again. Livestock farms were a popular asset for global investors because of growth in food prices. So, how are you meant to bring down food prices when you've got overseas investors looking out for their own pocket, for their own shareholders? It's a fair cry of what prices used to be. A strong communal growth make it attractive investment option similarly growth in the crop sector. Favorably, weather conditions make these sorts of after assets, she said. You see, we were told early this year we were going into a drought, and we were lied to. It's been raining most of the year, off and on, but for the last 4 months, it's been raining. These weather conditions, Australia, sunny one day, rainy the next, or flooding the next. And you're seeing this right now. Investors wouldn't be coming over here looking at all this agricultural land going, "Ooh, this looks good," because they haven't seen it when it's dry as a desert or flooded like the Pacific Ocean. At the moment, we have favorable conditions. China was the biggest foreign owner of agricultural land, holding about 2.1% of the country's farming assets. Daniel Ho Group, managing director of Chinese language real estate Port Jala, said foreign investors usually target specific types of farmland. I'll repeat that again. She said foreign investors usually target specific types of farmland. They're not coming after mum and pop farmland here. Unless it's the government that just wants to put wind and solar on agricultural land. But what you're seeing is it is a strategic plan from overseas investors to take our great resources, our national food bowl, into their hands. The person has jumped into the stream. If you can get that video, stream a big thumbs up, that would really much appreciate it. And if you'd like to make a comment in the comment section, I will read it out, and I will continue on with this article because I just really think it hits home on the homestead front, on the checkout front. Why food prices have skyrocketed, land prices have out of control. They are looking for land that can produce well into the future and is well watered, even in dry years, he said. They're not looking for billy goat country, um, Rocky Mountains. They're looking for prime real estate. That's the kind of property that can generate positive returns despite high upfront costs for land acquisition and new development and planting. You see, all of this is not cheap. All the taxes, all the land rates, water rates, this is not cheap. And you're starting to see that flow on to the checkout where food, pardon me, is so expensive. The UK held about 2% of Australians' farmland. Canada had 0.8%, and the Netherlands and the US each had 0.6%. Canada owned the largest share of foreign-owned water assets, much of which is in hands of large pension funds. Your 401k, for my American listeners. This is followed by the US, China, and the UK. What's really interesting about that is these sorts of private entities will go to certain regions, certain states and countries, buy up the water resources, the farming sector, and pretty much charge the residents double, triple every quarter for water usage, because they want to maintain the water, fix up the network and all that, but they just want to line their pockets with money. Miss Radar said the slight drop of foreign ownership of Aussie farmland may have been influenced by recent surge in real estate values. You see, now the farmland out west, up north, is so expensive. You could buy a homestead farmland pennies on the dollar not so long ago. Now, all of a sudden, since people have woken up and want to get away from the rat race, everyone wants to move west, move north. And now the prices of land has skyrocketed. So you're paying more for less. We have seen a bit of churn in large groups depositing assets over the last few years as farmland's value have escalated off the back of export activities and also valuable weather conditions, she said. Again, they should come here when we're in a drought, like 15 years ago. We've had a number of floods in a number of states over the last 10 years. So the last couple of years have been pretty good to us, but they said that we were going to go into a drought this year, and it's been not that quite the way they've said it's meant to be. We have seen a greater number of small activities both by local and offshore buyers groups, which have translated into a fall in numbers of assets held by foreign buyers. Mr. Wilder said Australia needs strategic about sales of food and water assets by foreign powers. Wherever possible, food and water assets should be in Australian hands or with buyers from Western democracies, nations in our key allies. Ownership from other nations should only take place where there is no alternative, clear, economical, rational, and where strategic safeguards are in place. Well, unfortunately, no one wants to buy these big, massive cattle stations. And if they do, it's not by Australians, it's by foreign investors. The taxman doesn't care. He just wants his slice of the property sale, the taxes, the land taxes, all the dams and creeks that they make, and all the water restrictions that they have in place, and all the licenses. So that's what the government really cares about, is the bottom dollar. And this letting all this go by the land side. And we'll have nothing else for Australians. And unfortunately, that's where we've gotten into this crisis, this food crisis, housing crisis by foreign investors. And today, ladies and gentlemen, this is what this article is all about, is waking people up. For the key people that I've tagged in: Sky News, Pauline Hanson, Matt Canavan, Kelly. These people have been preaching about this for years and years and years. And it comes no surprise that what I'm talking about is true. And I think more Australians should be waking up and saying enough is enough. Why aren't you buying Australian farmland? They only want to buy it to put on wind and solar, to destroy our food nation bowl. And that's where we're at in today's society. So I'm going to drop the link in the description if anyone would like to jump up on screen and talk about the article at hand, because I think this really hits home. So let's put this in here. If anyone would like to jump up and say a few words, you are most welcome to. These are the types of articles that I like to read out. I find very interesting, and I give my take on it. And it's just an analyst video. That's all it is. And I hope you gain something out of this. Let's have a look here. For the person that has just joined, if you'd like to hit that like button on the way in, if this article really hits home, really upsets you, real rise you up of what the government's doing, sleep behind the wheel, letting foreign ownership buy up our Australian farmland and water assets. I think it's just really criminal that it's been allowed to happen in this day and age. But the government will buy your land to put wind and solar on it. That's the difference. You're starting to see food prices escalate, your water rates escalate. Why? Because it is in foreign hands. They didn't come here to save your water and food. They didn't come here to help. They come here to make a profit for themselves and their shareholders. And I think the government has a lot to answer for. Well, I'm just going to leave it there then. If would like to jump up, I've read the article out. I just thought it was just really interesting, and it's just an article to really drum home, because I just think that we're going down a certain path of agriculture, farmland. There's it being ripped up from us, taken away from us, and the government just does not care. So I'll just leave it there. So until next time, either grow big or go to the shops. Thank you very much for watching it. Gardens Fresh Homestead. Bye for now.